Good. Right. So I'm trying to remember what I said. I only recorded that thing this morning. I'm trying to remember what it was. It seems like it's been a long day already. But let's have some contribution from those of you that have been read up and studied a bit. Matilda says she wants to contribute, but I don't think she's read Zechariah. So, let's start with Honey. What about starting with you? What have you got to share?
Yeah, Jenny, I know that God had in the Old Testament given the law of retaliation. Remember, an eye for an eye, and a tooth for a tooth, and a foot for a foot. And it comes up again here, and he says, where did I read it? The Lord Almighty says, I will send it, and I will not listen to you. Where was that? Sorry, I missed the page. Here we go.
Okay.
Verse 13. When I called, they did not listen. So when they called, I would not listen. The Lord is kind of bringing back the law of retaliation. But I know that it's not a nasty law. The law was to limit punishment to whoever offended you. So it's only an eye for an eye. If you break my arm, I can't break your 4 limbs. You can only break my 1 limb also. But it's just interesting that when he says, when I called, they didn't listen. So now when they called, I would not listen. Calling back the law of retaliation.
Okay, sure. That's
I
quite
don't know
fierce, Honey.
if that means to you the law of retaliation, whether.
Yeah. So how does that translate into our New Testament times?
Yeah, no, in New Testament, Jesus overturned that law because he says you must love your enemy.
Yeah.
Jesus overturned the law of retaliation completely. But it's just, look, we're still in the Old Testament, so it's interesting that God used the old law still. Well, he has to. He made it. God brought the law of retaliation in. Okay. So it just comes up again. I just noticed that.
Yes, it's a very, very interesting observation. Thank you, Honey. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Let's go then to George. What have you got for us today, George? And then I'm going Angela, then Stella for your order.
Yeah, Jenny, I've been a bit backwards and forwards here with the burning of the temple and why it was burned in Manasseh's day when he sinned greatly against God. And God warned them that he would be doing what he would be doing when he burnt the temple, when he allowed, what was his name who burnt the temple? The Persian king, Nebuchadnezzar. He allowed him to burn the temple. And then they were sent away for 70 years in exile. And in those 70 years, as you said in your previous recording, when you do anything, do it to God. Don't do it for your own silly or whatever purposes, or just do it for, for show. And God wasn't very pleased with them for doing it like that. And he warned them again that why they were sent into exile. So it was the preparation, I think, of coming back to the temple, readying the temple. In the 4th year, the temple wasn't fully completed. So the people were coming back. There was a problem of those that were quite comfortable in Babylon as well. They didn't really want to come back. So those who came back, they were being prepared for worship of the Lord as it should be according to the law. And the law was read. If we look at Nehemiah, the law was read again and everything was put in place through this, what we're reading here now, where the Lord warns them. I spoke to the prophets spoke to your forefathers, but nobody listened. You had a heart of stone. And I punished you, so don't do it again.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, George. I was actually going to read from Deuteronomy 28. I'm not sure if I've actually got my notes, but it's quite a drastic punishment that God warns the people that they will get if they go astray. It talks in the Bible there about being thrown in a whirlwind. And the Hebrew word for that is like a storm. It was a vicious, like a hurricane rather, or a typhoon. So interesting. Thanks, George. Right. Angela, what have you got to share with us?
Yes, Jenny, I listening as you were talking earlier on, what kept on coming to me regardless about justice and mercy, what kept on coming to me was in the book of Amos, with the dishonest scales and just the ritual for ritual's sake, bringing a blind and lame animals to be sacrificed to God. That kept on coming to me. And if we look at Hosea 6, verse 6, where God says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. And my mind went back to at one time, some years ago, a lot of people had it on their cars. It was something that the Muslim faith, there was some issue going on, justice before mercy. And I would always think, but it's mercy. God calls for mercy. It's like, we're going to get justice. We're going to get them back for what they've done. But God says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. So that really stood out for me. That kept on coming to me.
What was that reading again? Hosea, what?
Chapter 6, verse 6. I desire mercy, not sacrifice.
Okay, cool. Thank you. I must go and check that one out. Yes.
Yeah, that was interesting. And then what also came to mind in the New Testament with the Pharisees, with the fasting, they would put ashes on their heads and look miserable. Everybody had to see they were fasting. And God says here, why are they doing it? Are they just doing it for the sake of doing it? It's to do with their attitude, to come with the right mindset, with the heart, looking at the heart. Yeah, not just because it's for the sake of doing it, but it's supposed to be done. It has your heart and your mind must be right. The purpose to honor God.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have that same thing so easily in the church today, because we also have our festivals. You have Christmas and you have Easter. And the one that I always struggle with is the foot washing one, which starts out as a humility, and yet it becomes an act of pride when you allow somebody else to wash your feet, because you say, see how humble I am because I'm letting somebody else wash my feet. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So easy to get trapped in that. Yeah, so thanks. The other question, of course, and I'm not answering this one, but we talk about justice and mercy, and justice before mercy. Hani brought up this concept of retaliation. And the difference between justice and retaliation. We spoke about it before. I said justice and revenge, if you remember, but Hani's using the word retaliation. So it's a whole thing to think about. You know, is God entitled to do it, but not us? Is that also different laws for different people? Okay, so let's move on to Stella.
And actually, if I could just say something quickly, Jenny. Thank you.
Yes, Angela.
When Jesus said, turn the other cheek, and eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, but Jesus says, turn the other cheek. That is really difficult for people that are brought up with this law, this Mosaic law.
Yeah, and we cry, you're entitled, this is your rights, you know. We don't teach mercy and compassion, we teach rights. Which, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, personally, I believe that there's one law for everybody, that we all, there's not one for this person and that we all need to obey whatever. But coming from this lesson today, you know, God gave us these laws for a reason. And it doesn't help, the ritual part, I don't believe is what is important, because you can act, it doesn't have to be sincere, but God looks at our hearts, and it's what's inside there that matters. And I think that's why when he asks, you know, were you doing these rituals for me, or was it for yourself? And I think most of the time it was for themselves. They weren't really, you know, if we do the ritual, then maybe God will forgive us and we can carry on. But God looks inside our hearts and he wants to see what's really going on there. And as verse 8 says, you know, we must do what he says, that we must be kind to and merciful. And it mustn't just be an act, but it must be something that comes from our hearts. And I think that's what God is looking at in this instance. It's not so much the rituals, but the mercy and compassion that we need to be showing to one another, to live what we preach, not just to act, you know, but to be what we say.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. No, that sounds good to me. Sure. What I was saying also in the video, that it wasn't about even the burning of the temple. It was about the state of their hearts towards God. Yeah, it is basically, yeah, slightly different angle on what Stella's saying. Yeah, I think that's great. Everybody's gone slightly different places this time. It was a busy passage. There was actually quite a lot to get out of it, wasn't it? So shall we go around again? Have we got anything more? Honey, anything more to add?
I picked up on Stella's God who knows everything. He had known that these people had not fasted for him. They had actually fasted just for show, just to show the people that they upheld the law. So God knew their hearts all the way, and he knew that they were, it's a false worship. I'm not surprised that he said, can I please stop doing it? Because apart from the fact that the temple was now going to be rebuilt, God knew that they were just doing that for show. Yeah. And I was going to say about God's law of retaliation. He always brought in mercy. He always said, apart from having the law of retaliation, you must also remember that I'm a merciful and compassionate God, and you must do likewise. So people mustn't come and say, oh yeah, but look, God says an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. No, he also says be mercy and compassion, show mercy and justice. Those are very big things for God that he insists on. And we must hold on to that as well. As I said, Jesus came and undid all of that by saying, love your enemy, be kind to those who persecute you.
Yeah. Just saying Jesus undid it is a little bit too easy. We really need to, but there isn't time now to wrestle with it. But at some stage, we really need to wrestle with, did Jesus undo it? Did he somehow change it? Because he did say that he didn't come to do away with the law, but to fulfill it. Although then Paul does talk about the fact that we're under a new law. So it's actually complicated.
Yes.
And I think that if we were to wrestle with it and understand it better, we would have a more profound understanding of the Old Testament, rather than just saying that was God then and this is God now, but somehow to be able to integrate it in ourselves and our theological understanding that God is still the same God. You know what I'm saying? So somehow to see that even though we think he's acting with retaliation, if he's the same God, he must actually be acting with mercy and compassion. So sorry, honey, I think my brain is working too much. Enough from me, I'm talking too much. Thank you for that. George, anything more to add?
Yeah, Jenny, as you said, it's we haven't got time now, and it's a wonderful thing to I think delve into what you just mentioned now, the different time periods of the Lord. But I think what is very for me is the fact that if you look at the Israelites, the chosen people of God, if we want to call them that, we were never under the law. So the law, as we are discussing in Zerubbabel's time and Nebuchadnezzar's time, was given to the Jews by Moses from the mountain, the Mosaic law. And from that time that Moses met with God, the Israelites did not listen. At various stages, we're looking at God being hurt here. We're looking at God punishing these people. Why? Why is the Lord doing this to these people? And from Moses' time right through to Zechariah's time, the entire Old Testament, God had to chastise his people and discipline them because of their stubbornness. So we're coming to a time now where we refer to Christ, to the new law. And yes, that is totally, I agree with you, Jenny. If you look at the new law, Christ didn't come to do away with the law, but there's no more sacrifices. He sacrificed once and for all. And that is the new law. That is the new temple. There is no more temple. Christ is the temple. So when we look at it from that perspective, Christ is now the new law. And I give you two great commands. Love your neighbor as you love yourself, and love your God with all your heart and all your soul. That is the law. But when we look at the law as referred to now, then yes, that is the Mosaic law, and Jesus has fulfilled that law. So with Jesus coming, there's no more need for that temple or the reading of the law in the temple, or the righteousness through sacrifice and whatever they followed through the high priest once a year going into the most holy place. That curtain has now been broken, and Jesus is our high priest, giving us access, direct access to God. So yeah, it should be a wonderful lesson for us to study this and to research it with somebody like yourself, Jenny, guiding us, because I think you need a lot of guiding in this.
Well, we can get through as much scripture as we can, and I'm sure that we will get there, because what you say about we as Gentiles are not under the Mosaic law, never were, then we come to the whole Romans 2 stuff, is to say, well, which law were Gentiles under? And actually we were under a kind of a natural law. And that's also another whole direction we can go to understand the depth of and the complexity of our God. So, yeah, thank you, George.
Well, if you look at what you've just referred to now, the law of Hammurabi, in Abraham's time, they also had a law.
Yes.
Yeah.
They also had a law. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. There's a whole angle there. There's another whole angle there. I'm not going to start, because then we'll get totally done it.
No, leave it alone.
Okay, but yeah, okay, another time. I really must. Yes, thank you for that, George. Angela.
Jenny, yes, I'm just thinking my mind's racing too as the discussion's going on, and what you said, it's almost like Jesus came and undid everything. But then, of course, what came to mind was as what came up as George said, and you also said, Jenny, I haven't come to abolish the law, I've come to fulfill it. And if we look at the Old Testament, God is perceived as this harsh God, and the New Testament is seen as this loving God, and it's because of Jesus. And if we look at all the prophets, people still didn't listen. God sent all the prophets, they still didn't listen. And God, in his wisdom and mercy, decided to come as himself, as his son, to save us. And what came to me, what my priest taught me in 1966 with confirmation, he said, if you forget everything else I've taught you, remember this, John 3:16, for God so loved the world. And I went home and I memorized it, and it stayed with me. It's really stayed with me. And another thing which came to mind as you were speaking, Jenny, was the unforgiving servant, the parable, when Jesus told the parable about the servant who owed the master money, and he pleaded for the master to have mercy, which he did. But then he went and he grabbed the person who owed him money, and so that he was shown mercy, and yet he didn't do the same. And God, because it is still referred to for all people, we should show that to all.
Exactly.
So that would be a very interesting discussion.
Yes, that's the whole realm of justice, like that. It's why Paul will say, I'm the greatest of sinners, because it's so easy for me to say, oh, so-and-so has done that, and so-and-so has done that, and God come and judge them. Meanwhile, God is looking at me and saying, yeah, and what has Jenny done?
Yeah.
Are you perfect? Are you in a position to point fingers at this one and that one? So, yeah. Thanks, Angela. Stella, final word from you?
Yes, I was wondering about burning the temple and destroying the temple all the time, and when God had told them to build it. And I was thinking along the lines that that temple was destroyed because it meant so much to the Israelites. And then God goes and scatters his people. The temple was somewhere where they would go to and pray, where they felt God lived. Then he goes and scatters these people. And I thought, now, why would he do this, besides them not being obedient to him? And then I thought, well, what they were doing was just a ritual. It didn't really have any significance to them. And they were being false. It was just a show. There wasn't any sincerity. And by doing this and scattering his people, I thought, this was a way of perhaps making them think, making them wake up, because it is when we are really in a bad place that we are closest to God and we turn to God. And maybe that is why God allowed these things to happen, to wake these people up, to help them to realize it's not in the acting or performance, but it's really what's inside of you that needs to come out. And you need to be sincere, and when you're praying to me, mustn't just be words. So that was one of the thoughts that came along. And also, as Angela was talking, you know, it's so easy for us to see the speck in someone else's eye, but what about the plank that's in our own? You know, we don't see ourselves as other people do, and it's so easy to see other people's faults while we don't see our own. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. Sure. Thank you, Stella. You've been thinking deeply about this stuff. It's great. I don't know where you get the time. You seem to be so busy, but it's wonderful. Midnight, everybody there with their Bibles, Zechariah, Googling, reading. It's wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate your contribution. It's getting so rich. I'm looking forward now to Zechariah 8 to see where that takes us. And then I really want to see where the second half of Zechariah goes. As I said in the video, this is like a pivot point. I can't remember what happens in chapter 9. I'm going to have to go read it up. But we'll do chapter 8 next week. So thank you all. May God bless you. And we will see you again.
Thank you, Jenny, for all that you do.
Jenny.
Bye.
Thank you. Enjoy.